Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fiction genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Supernatural as well as the latest episode of Beyond. Like always, if I'm talking about something that you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include a time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you don't want to hear what I have to say about this week's episode of Supernatural, you can skip to what I have to say about this week's episode of Beyond. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is this week's episode of Supernatural. This is a very unique episode of Supernatural. Like, to my recollection, I'm sure there's a lot of episodes I'm not remembering, but this is probably the least supernatural episode that's ever existed. Just because, just the, feel of the episode, it felt very kind of, detective noir-like, just like a lot of the music, beats and stuff like that, and just the overall story. Because basically, it's like, oh, we're looking for... Because I thought it was kind of interesting right from the beginning, because they were like, okay, they're looking for the blood of a man most holy. And they immediately go, okay, we're looking for the blood of a saint. But it's like, well, that's not exactly what it says. So I figured there'll be kind of like something that's kind of lost in translation because they phrase it like that. Like, the blood of a saint isn't necessarily the same thing as the blood of a man most holy, but nevertheless. Basically, everything involves them meeting up with three different people. A lady named Margaret, a dude named Green Street, and another dude who's a mobster named, was it Scartoony? Which is so interesting. First of all, the lady Margaret, I thought that was kind of interesting because it's like, she's like super into Sam. It's like, oh, if you need anything at all. And Dean's like, trying to he interrupts the conversation. She goes, I was talking to, and Sam's like, oh, Sam. And she's like, yes, Sam. And I guess because normally it's like Dean's the one that kind of gets a little bit of attention from the ladies. But every once in a while, it happens with Sam too. So, and now he's got to sit there and just listen to Sam kind of flirt and the lady flirting by it. Just kind of like, ugh, disgusting. Dean had his moment where he met that lady who was like super, she's like, oh, I'm into supernatural. I wonder, was she reading something specific? Because they focus on that. That literally turned into nothing. Just like, hey, she's like, yeah, I'm really into the supernatural. Is that just supposed to be a wink and a nudge about like, Or was that her reading the book? Because remember, the show Supernatural is actually based on a book that, unbeknownst to everyone, God wrote, because that was God going off pretending to just be regular Chuck and being a prophet, and that old thing from way back in the day. That's so, 7-8 years ago, I guess, canonically speaking. Nevertheless, so I don't know. I didn't pay enough attention to the book she was reading. I didn't know if that's what that was. And then Dee was going to be like, oh, really? And also, it could just be like, oh, yeah, you're reading about the supernatural. It's like, well, as someone who lives in the world of supernatural, dealing with monsters, sadly, nothing came about. I thought something would. It was just kind of, I don't know, a little wink and a nudge. You have Green Street being like, oh yeah, get this for me. Get me the skull of St. Peter's, which was stolen, and then I will give you the blood of the saint that you want. And then on top of that, they deal with a Seattle mobster who also wants the skull too, because he's like, oh, I appreciate these artifacts, no one else will, yada yada yada. To be fair, in actuality, it's not 3 people, it's actually 4 people, because you also have to include the priest Luca, who ended up knocking Sam out, which is like, is that really very priestly of you, Father Luca, to kind of just be knocking people out? It's like, well, I got scared and full, because for him, it's like, this skull is very important because what it represents, it is very important to the village he's from, because it's like, it's such a symbolic item for his people. And it's something that even later on, Dean kind of goes, it's just kind of like a bunch of bones, right? It's like, well, yes, but it might be just like a chunk of bones or whatever. But, people all put their beliefs in something, and to their faith in something, it's more important than what the item actually is. What it represents is kind of what matters the most, so. But like I said, it had this very oh, I go this way, oh, I'm hiring you to do this job. Well, some other person's hiring you to do this job, and the mobster is hiring you to do this job. There's also a fake cop. There's death. And like I said, there's legitimately nothing supernatural about this episode, which is so weird and crazy. There's always something supernatural. Hence the show Supernatural. To be fair, the only supernatural thing is well, we need the blood because we're trying to create a spell to open up a portal into another dimension. There's your supernaturalness, but within the confines of the story, nothing. No monsters or anything like that, so. I did even the monster being like, you're Winchesters, right? Didn't you guys die 6 years ago? And it's like, Sam's like, oh, actually, it's kind of a funny story. It's like, honestly, I don't care. It's like, oh, okay. So, I always appreciate that when people throw that up. It's like, aren't you supposed to be dead? It's like, yeah. It's like, within the confines of the show, with just in that particular incident, to be fair, I don't even remember what the exact incident was that they, originally faked their deaths. it was something related to a cop, wasn't it? Like a cop was helping them, and they faked their deaths. I don't remember, but the point I was going to make is like they've died like what hadn't been like what 9 or 10 times at this point that they've actually died canonically over the course of the series, and it's like, which time are you talking about as dying? You got to be a little bit more specific. But it was kind of interesting to hear a lot of the stuff that Father Luca had to say, basically saying, because like Dean had it justified because it's like the world ain't perfect, so it doesn't need me to be perfect to fix, try and make, do the right thing. It's like if I have to kind of be on a little bit of the morally gray area to kind of get the job done, then so be it. It just kind of goes with things. But Luca kind of says that later on. It's like, oh, we all have this mentality of the world ain't perfect, so why should we? It's like, no, like that mentality kind of begets us being lazy, because that means we're not all we need to do good, all we have to do is put forth effort. That's all. The fact of the matter is, no one's asking anyone to be perfect. The world isn't perfect. It will definitely never be perfect. But the least we can do is try to work each day to make another day better. It just even one day at a time, we just make this day better than this day better. Then at the end of the road, like maybe, there'll be some good to it, so I don't know. I just thought that was just kind of like an interesting perspective on outlook. I even love that when Dean was choked that guy, like, the father's like, okay, hello there. He's like, what are you doing here? I'm here being the distraction. And then Dean choked the dude out. He's like, really? Being the distraction? He's like, lying's a sin. It's like, is that guy okay? And Dean's like, really? And he proceeds to like knock like all the other guys out. I'm sure he was asking every time too, but I guess that kind of hints why he is kind of like a man most holy, just who he is personality wise and everything. It just he is a man of strong faith, and which was I still once again go back to the fact is you knocked Sam out, so that didn't seem very holy, but hey, it is what it is, Nevertheless, sadly the dealings didn't go down the way everyone wanted it to. It's super interesting considering the fact is literally the only person that walked away alive from that deal, except for Luca, Sam, and Dean, was Green Street, because everyone else, like the fake cop dude, ended up shooting Margaret. The whole gun battle took out like the mobster dude too. So it's like, oh man, that sucks. I mean, not unless he got arrested. The only one we saw get arrested at the end of the episode was Green Street. So I mean, obviously, probably wasn't going to have a happy ending. To be fair, I don't think I've ever really watched enough noir stuff to really know, but I feel like that kind of fits the motif of noir stuff of like, there is no happy endings when it comes to stuff like that. There's kind of no happy endings in this because it kind of came out in the end, but even at the end of it, it's like, oh, they got the blood of a man most holy, but it's like, even then, it's like, will it work? Does it work? I was kind of hoping that Margaret would be okay at the end of it all, just because I was like, oh, like her being flirted with Sam and everything. I mean, didn't necessarily mean that there was at least one outright criminal in all of this, and that was the mob boss. But to be fair, Green Street's kind of one too, just because like he set people up to get killed and stuff like that. So there's that. So I don't know. I guess there are kind of three bad guys in their own right, but still. There was a conversation with Sam at the end of the episode that I thought was pretty neat. It does come up every once in a while, and that is a conversation of like, I feel like they might have brought it up this season, but I'm pretty sure they bring it up kind of frequently. It's a whole aspect of like, can we do this forever? It's like, yeah, we do good. We save people, we kill monsters, but at the end of the day, there will always be more people in danger, and there will always be another monster waiting around a corner. So like, I know we do good work, but is it enough? Like, not saying is it not worth it, but it's like, it's kind of that endless battle like that goes on forever, kind of the light and darkness situation, it's an endless cycle that you cannot break. And so it's like, what do you do in that? And I think it still kind of goes back to what Lucas said. All you can do is try your best. All you can do is try to make one day better. Like, you might not be able to save everyone, but you do your best to save as many people as you can. And that day was a success to a certain extent, I guess is one way of looking at it. And you just try to do the same thing. You play your little part because, like I said, there's also the whole situation of legacies. I think that's something that's come up before. I think in particular this season, but it's also something I've brought up before. It's like, if you set that as a benchmark, like this is who you are and all you've tried to do. If you pass that on to the next generation, they will do their best. As long as you do that, there will always be a fight for people trying to do what's right and save people's lives, so. But at the end of the day, they're like, when it's all said and done, no more like having to fight evil, no more having to worry about monsters because they're always moving from one apocalypse to the next. This is literally their third level apocalypse that they're basically heading into, kind of fourth. I mean, depends on what you count as an apocalypse. Do you count the angels falling from heaven as an apocalypse, or the God? What are those things from season 7, the Leviathans? Do you count that as an apocalypse? I don't really think so. Amara, did you count her as an apocalypse? It turns into that conversation. So, but when it's all said and done, Dean does have faith, which is interesting because you think out of anyone, Dean's not the one that really has much faith. That's kind of usually on Sam's shoulders, but even Sam's gonna tap for faith. He can't be optimistic now just because it's like he's, this season kind of really brought up like the negative side in him about this whole situation, where he just kind of was like, oh yeah, like we have a plan and everything, but then once that plan was gone, it's like, I don't have anything else to hold on to. Dean didn't have that faith before, but now he does. So it's just kind of interesting when you see the brothers kind of flip back and forth between their perspectives of like, oh, you expect Dean to act this way, but in fact it's actually Sam that's acting this way, and we expect Sam to act a certain way, it's actually Dean who's acting that way. And it's just kind of interesting that their characters kind of flip like that. So I will note, I do know that this is kind of a short recording. I pretty much kind of talked about all like I said, it wasn't like a lot of like heavy plot development. It just kind of like all things were kind of working towards this one, that like getting the blood. So kind of a shorter recording than I normally would do. Do note, from what I was looking at, because wasn't able to watch the episode live, it seems like the next episode is on the 29th of March. So like it's taking like a 2-week break. So do keep that in mind. Also look it up yourself, but like just from what I was reading, it seems like that is the case. So, which is interesting because it just came back from a break last week. So, but nevertheless, it will be returning on March 29th. So do keep that in mind. I'm very interested to see what else is in store for us in the next episode. And now moving on to this week's episode of Beyond. So let's kind of break everything down bit by bit. First of all, this episode obviously left me with the biggest question of what is up with the FBI agent Borden, because obviously Luke goes to her, and at the same time she knows way more than I feel like she should. Like I feel like the FBI would know a little bit here and there, but to go as far as knowing about the machine, and it's like, oh yeah, Colden possibly has abilities. It's like, no, there's no way the FBI would really be thinking something like that. Like they would throw this possibility out. It's obviously seemed like she was saying all that so Luke would talk more about it. And like Luke opens up about everything just because, I mean, in his own way, it's just like, I'm trying to do everything I can to protect my family, so you can't fault him for it. But it's like, at the same time, I'm still kind of like, I don't know about telling her everything. Because especially because Luke's like, oh, I'm going to tell you exactly where the facility is. I need you to take a whole bunch of cops there. And I was like, okay, so this is going to blow up in Luke's face. She's going to take cops there. Nobody's there. There's nothing there. And he's going to look stupid and foolish. It might hurt the investigation in some shape or form. But then later on, you see she has a meeting with Diane, and then Diane kind of brings up Luke, and she's like, I could have misheard it, but I'm pretty sure she said, oh, I didn't know you had another son named Luke. It's like, wait, what? Not only are you not telling her that you met with him earlier, at the very least, I could be like, okay, you don't want to mess with your own investigation, because if she finds out that Luke's came to you about stuff, then it might, compromise Diane's willingness to kind of work with you and stuff like that, and maybe she'll try and pull Luke away. So, I'll give it there. But to even it going as far as ignoring, really? Like, you were so full of crap, lady. What is your deal? Like, there's something there. Like, you are not a good person. Like, this whole situation seems like it's a front. Because it's interesting because Yellow Jacket ends up bringing up the test. He's like, oh yeah, totally, they try to go to the FBI. Like, the Matthews went to the FBI. And it's like, how do you know that? Either he's just really good at keeping on resources, or he's, got someone in the FBI that gives him a lookout. But it's like, the way Borden's talking makes me think more and more suspicious. Like I said, not unless she's got her own game. Like I said from the beginning, I've never really trusted her. I felt like the fact is that she's in this by herself. Like, I feel like there's at least one other agent with her, but for her to be handling it by herself, I don't know, just based on my knowledge of TV shows, I'm like, typically, you rarely see cops by themselves. It's like the cop and their partner, typically, no matter what. I don't know, maybe she really is just by herself, and just, I don't know. I just don't really trust her. I don't know whether she's part of this Hollow Sky situation. I'm also starting to think there might actually be another group at play here. Maybe not even just Hollow Sky. There might be another group entirely that might be play here. Maybe Borden's from that. Maybe she is part of this whole Hollow Sky thing and she's just fronting. But if that was the case, why would this whole situation bother Yellow Jacket about them going to the FBI? Well, now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, she probably is their FBI plant. And then it's just kind of like oh yeah, like, I mean, to be fair, because they got this, like, her number from the sheriff. The question is, how did the sheriff get it? So not unless the sheriff is in on all this Hollow Sky stuff, and then he ended up also, well, no, I don't think he is. No, he could be and just not know everything that's going to, I don't know. It's hard to say who knows what and who's really on. I mean, because it's one of those kind of basically questions like everyone in this series. I mean, especially when you find out kind of how much of a douchebag Ian actually is. That he's neck deep in all of this. Which, speaking of Ian, sadly, he ended up dead this episode. He ended up talking Diane. It was really interesting finding out that basically him and Diane dating actually preceded him working with Hollow Sky. Like, they actually approached him because him and Diane were dating. So it was like a legit relationship, but then it was just kind of like oh no, like, let me explain myself. Even Diane be like, really? How you going to explain on spying on me and my children? Really? But side note, does Diane know about Tom being arrested? I would assume she would, but because she didn't bring it up in conversation at all in the episode. I guess because more often than not, it's her and Borden talking about talking. So I guess it's like Tom's not really there all the time anyway. Not unless she was, because I thought the person she was going to meet with was Ian, because she was telling Ian, hey, come on, go talk to Borden. So not unless it was a situation she was referencing Tom, but I'm pretty sure she had mentioned she was talking about Ian in particular. Sadly, Ian wasn't able to show up because Yellow Jacket found him, and it's like, oh, I know. Oh, you were trying to run, weren't you? He's like, no, I believe in the cause. It's like, if you really believed in the cause, you wouldn't be afraid to die right now. And then Yellow Jacket's like, you know what? I'm not going to kill you. He's like, I'm part of management now. The moment he said, it's like, yeah, but you're going to get someone else to kill him because that's not your job anymore. And as he's walking away, he has Ramon walk up and kill Ian. So, poor bastard. No, because for one, that's Yellow Jacket's style. Because let's not forget what he did to Kevin. He gave Kevin a false sense of security last season, and then immediately hard cut to him, like, disposing of Kevin's body, So, I won't lie, I do feel a little bit bad for him. Yes, he did some terrible things, and he kind of got mixed up in all of this, but I don't know. Maybe it counts for something, because at the end he was trying to do the right thing potentially. So I don't know. I mean, to be fair, he was packing up and stuff like that. So I don't know if he was actually going to meet up with Diane, or whether he really was just going to run away and just not even bother, because it was going to be like, oh, probably didn't want to expose himself like that. So I don't know. Once again, maybe it's even Borden's fault that Ian says. Like I said, we will have to wait and see on that front. And really quickly, let's talk about Luke, which he went to go visit Willa. I love that whole cute moment of him being in front of her doorstep, kind of talking to himself, and obviously the camera's muted, but then Willa unmutes, and he's like, oh, no. It's like, no, don't say that, don't say this. He's trying to work it out, and then Willa talks to him. He's like, oh, yeah, ha, 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 and ends up coming inside, and they end up talking. She shows him the machine and everything. Which for her, it's like, they still want to rebuild the machine, because it's like, if they can get it operating, then they can go over to the other side. I mean, I guess another option would be, well, you could always tell Hollow Sky, but I don't think that's really in a situation that, I mean, I don't know, like, is the machine even operational? Since they don't really use it, like, is it even operational at all itself, subsequently, since they left it behind in season 1's finale, so... Because in her eyes, it's like, oh, I can help fix whatever happened that Holden feels like he broke by going in there and fixing it. Maybe that'll kind of fix everything. And Luke's trying to fix everything in his own way, because it's like, oh, we need to go to the FBI. That we don't need to worry about the other realms, because for in his mind, it's like, I mean, to be fair, it's a situation that the FBI can't handle. Literally, the whole Diego situation, that is something they cannot handle. Obviously, I'll get more into that in a little bit, but more so than anything, it's like, I think in Luke's mind, it's like, no, these are just weird people. They don't have any powers. They're just like a cult. So it's like, let's leave it up to some actual authorities to handle this. So that's kind of where his mind is. But then, you have Willa kind of bringing up something interesting too. It's like, the fact of the matter is, if the cops get involved, that means they're going to be unraveling everything. And let's not forget, Arthur is at the center of all of this, and it's like, what's going to happen to him? But Arthur's kind of giving up to his fate, because it's kind of like, it's kind of going on for long enough, and he just kind of wants to end things. So what that means going forward, I don't know. Like I said, Luke's kind of getting betrayed by Borden. Like I said, I don't know what she has in store, but it cannot be good. And it might be a situation I had this inkling feeling that Arthur is not going to survive this season. Like, somebody's going to take him out. Who exactly, I don't know. But whether it be Borden, someone else, like, I just get the feeling like, just because I'm sure in, Arthur's eyes, it's kind of like he deserves it. To be fair, it's kind of interesting, too, is him and Charlie haven't had their face-to-face this season. Like, obviously, she saw him, but he never saw her. So that's still something I feel like we're going to have to deal with going forward. It'll probably be like one of the last things that pops up with Arthur before, like I said, something happens to him. But like I said, that's just speculation. So we'll have to wait and see. And then the other side of the things is the whole assault on a police station. That kind of was like crazy. Obviously, like as we know at the end of last episode, all those things from the realm possess the bodies of all those people at in those freezers at that Hollow Sky. And it's just like they all march on the station, and you have the one guy in particular, it's the actor who plays Hal on Riverdale. He ends up, like, the moment that cop, she turns her back, she turns away for like literally a couple seconds, she's turning around, they're already both going. I'm like, she was around, turned her back for like a couple seconds, and those suckers are fast. And then just the other cop is outside and he's bloodied up. I'm like, how did you do that in a matter of seconds? You suckers are, I already knew you suckers were something not normal, but to that extent, holy crap. And last thing we see is, well, we can only assume every cop in the police station is dead because they made their way to the bottom. Because it's like, oh, the one they're looking for is the prisoner. Referencing the thing inside of Diego, which kind of makes it goes, the fact is they went out of their way to rescue Diego must mean that he's top dog. Like, whether he's like the king of those things or just their leader in general. But it's like, I guess that would make the argument that he's the strongest one. And let's not forget about him taunting Tom. He's like, oh yeah, I was telling you, oh, you understand? It's like, oh, I was telling you that you can't protect your son. What's coming, you won't be able to save him from it. And he's like, I told you so. And it's him and the others are walking away, leaving Tom kind of locked up. So, oof, that sucks. Because everything Tom's ever done is trying to protect his son. And he just can't. And even if he wasn't locked up, this is something he can't protect Holden from anyway. Like, sadly, Diego, or rather the thing inside of Diego, was right about that, so. But like I said, I'm curious if that's the case. Like I said, the way they're treating Diego, it is like he is like the leader or whatever. It's like, huh. Because something kind of came up too, like, why didn't they take Frost's body? Like, they took every other body there except for Frost's body. Why? Is it because of his circumstances being consumed at the end of season 1? Maybe he wasn't entirely consumed, so maybe he's kind of in a coma. Like, maybe he's kind of stuck somewhere in his body, like in that space between the realm and his body. Like, maybe he's stuck in somewhere between there, so they can't possess his body. Or are they waiting? Are they trying to like completely break the boundary so that the top dog, like where Diego might be like the top dog now, but maybe he's like the right-hand man to the top dog, something like that, and that person wants Frost's body? It's hard to say. I mean, because they're trying, because I feel like it'd be the easiest thing, especially with what Frost represents with the Hollow Sky. He's the foundation for it all, which, that's why Tess is trying to keep him safe, and also trying to make sure that all the people keep up their faith, because if they found out the truth about all this stuff happening, then basically all that they tried to accomplish, basically this investment of Tessa's is going to blow up in her face. So even to the point, she's actually getting ready to run herself, because she ends up telling her wife, she ends up confessing about cancer, saying it's in remission. I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting that you actually blurted it out. Like, I wasn't expecting you to say anything about like what's really going on, which she doesn't say everything that's going on, but these new circumstances, she doesn't know what's going on, but it's kind of weird and crazy, and the last thing she wants to do is get involved in this world. She's never cared about this. She's not as faithful as someone like Yellow Jacket or Frost. She never believed in this like that. For her, this was just a business opportunity, and now she wants to take this as an opportunity to bounce. It's like, get everything in order so she can leave. To be fair, Yellow Jacket ain't gonna let you off that easily, just because, like, the moment you prove no longer important to the organization, I don't know. It seems like she's got some stuff, like she's ready for her grand exit. Now, what that means in particular, I don't know whether that means taking down Yellow Jacket or what, or, maybe kind of getting her, like, some out of, like, Hollow Sky and then basically turning any evidence she has over to the FBI so they can bring it down. Something like that. I don't know. Because basically whatever her scheme is, it is basically like we need to run, and when we run, we never come back. So I'm very interested to see what Tessa's like end goal is. And then finally, another big chunk of this episode was about the whole Holden, Charlie, and Jeff all working together to kind of break Edgar out of that facility. I love that they're constantly making fun of Jeff and his like. It's like, oh, Charlie's constantly like, man, your drawing is terrible. This map is terrible, Jeff. It's like a 6-year-old drew it, and so it's like, oh, poor Jeff. And then there's also like he's in there eating chips, and Holden's like, really, Jeff? Shut up, dude. I'm trying to listen to Charlie over the radio. He's just like, sorry, and just crunchy. I'm like, you were too lax at this situation. You're trying to break someone out of a mental facility, and you're just up there lax, just eating chips and everything. I love it. Then there's the whole ice cream situation. But what really took me by surprise was that the Edgar's doctor situation. The fact that she locked him up in a freezer. I was like, what is up with that? She's not Hollow Sky because she's asking him questions about, oh, how do you do what you're doing? She's like, so that kind of makes me wonder about the whole, like, kind of like the Borden situation. Is like, is she working with a different group entirely? I think, but ultimately what I walked away from this episode thinking, and it just could be me misinterpreting it, but it seemed like it was more like no, she's just a doctor who's very like curious about everything, trying to figure everything out. Because she even went up researching Holden. It's like, oh, Holden, he has powers, doesn't he? Because he was in a coma just like you. It's like, oh, does he have abilities as well? Because she's asking questions, and even Edgar is like, you're not asking questions as a doctor. I think maybe at one point in time he would have looked at her as like, oh, this is someone I can rely on. She at least talks to me. She tries to understand me. But at that point it was like, oh, it's no longer about like trying to look after me as a patient. It's more like, oh no, you're trying to take advantage and try to manipulate me, I guess is kind of what was going on. It's kind of interesting too because Holden's power is kind of seen to also, like, kind of really quickly, seem to be kind of on the fritz to a certain extent because it's trying to knock that guy out with the bucket, but all he did was knock over the rice. And I like that Jeff goes over and hits that guy, and the dude stands up and says, wow, you are a lot bigger than you were when you sat down. And Jeff kicking ass and at the same time getting his ass kicked. He put up a good fight, but he was getting tossed around. I was like, man, this isn't going to end well. Jeff is going to get knocked out. It's like, nope. Jeff came back in the end and won the fight. I even love Charlie kind of joking, being like, good job, Scarface. Kind of like making I forgot what she said exactly. She was making a reference to Scarface because he had like, I think powder from the extinguisher on his nose or something like that. Like Jeff was tired. He was just kind of like he was barely standing after that fight. It's like, which is kind of interesting because that's the first time we've ever seen Jeff kind of like hand to hand like that. Like this is legitimately the first time I've ever seen Jeff actually fight too. So that big dude did not go down easy. But yeah, getting back to it, they rescue Edgar. Edgar ends up he ends up using his powers, and it's like everything starts singeing a little bit. Like some of the people's shoes start melting to the floor. Then like you can see like hairs on people's arms kind of lighting on fire, like a little bit of embers on them, and like their skin is burning and heating up. Like you can almost see like boils popping on their skin from it heating up so much. So the question then becomes, like I said, like, what is her whole deal? Is it simply she's just a doctor, just like, oh, like all this wonderful discovery? She kind of like one of those fringe doctors? Because it seemed like she was so quick to, I mean, especially it seems like she's heading down the Arthur route, because it seemed like she was kind of looking into his research and everything about this whole thing. Like I said, she looked into Holden too, so there's more to that doctor. And I just get the inkling that we have not seen the last of her, because when it's all said and done, I think she might come for a Holden. Because this might be one of those situations of like, even when Hollow Sky is taken care of, when this is all said and done, there might also be that possibility of like people with abilities being found out. And this particular doctor might be like, hey, we need to gather up all these people, dissect them and understand them. It's like, oh, this whole going into the coma and waking up with abilities. Maybe they might try that on people or something to see if anything happens, you know. So I don't know. I definitely feel like we have not seen the end of her, but at least for now, she's backing down. So, because I'm surprised she didn't call the cops or anything, but I guess like, I don't know, because she was telling Edgar, it's like, oh, well, we're your family. And Edgar's like, my family's dead, and don't try to, you know, force this on me, saying, kind of pretending like you're my family when you're not. So, we also just side note thing of like, you have Holden kind of freaking out a little bit because he's like, man, he looks at Edgar and it's like, is that going to be me in a few years? Like, to being someone else, reduced to being someone else's lab rat and then being forced, waiting for someone to kind of rescue me from my situation. Is like, is that what his life is? Like, he knows there ain't no normal life for him, but it's like, is that what's waiting for him in the future with all of this craziness? And then Charlie proceeds to kiss him and be like, I'm never going to let that happen. Which I'm like, yeah. What did I say? Charted. Did I ever give them a name before? I don't think I did. Maybe Harley? Charted or Harley? It might be Harley. I think I like Harley a lot. No, it wouldn't be Harley. Yes, it would be. If I just took, yeah. We could go Harley or Charted. Either way. But then it turns out, oh yeah, Edgar's not the one that needs to get in the refrigerator, in the freezer. It has to be Holden because it's like, it's something only he can do. He's the one that's kind of has to be fixed everything. This is his journey to take. So Edgar will show him what to do, but that's about it. So, I mean, to be fair, we still know nothing about Edgar, which is crazy to think about. I mean, especially when you think of, like I said, I feel like this season is going by so much faster, like storyline wise, but also just season wise. Like, to be fair, the first season went by pretty quickly too because I didn't wait week to week too because like I binged on it like after the premiere, so there's that. But nevertheless, it's like literally there's only like 2 episodes left in this season like already, and it's like, wow, we're already nearing the end, and it's just like things are heating up on all fronts. Obviously, like a whole bunch of those things are here. Like there's a whole like freezer thing, and Holden's got this journey to try and fix things. So you've got the realm side of things covered. Then there's the whole like real world situation, whatever it is that Tess has planned, whatever is in store for like the Matthews, that in particular being Luke, Diane, and Tom, and then like, Willa and Arthur kind of mixed up in all of this. I'm very interested to see where like the next episode takes us with all of this. The point I was going to make earlier is that the fact is we don't know that much about Edgar. We saw that little bit about his past, and then that's it. And that was kind of something like Holden had kind of brought up too. It's like, we got to be careful with him because we don't know that much about Edgar. Like, it makes you wonder if Holden hadn't told him let's go, would Edgar have like killed them if needed being, like everyone else trying to stop him at that facility, I mean, it seems like a weird, eccentric dude, but hey, maybe that's just because of living his whole life. I mean, a good chunk of his life in that facility. I don't remember them. They might have said it, but I don't remember how long he was in a coma. I would assume, because I think Holden has been in the longest recorded one, at least amongst people with abilities thing. Maybe, I don't remember. Like I said, maybe it could have been like, Edgar was in one for like 12 years, just like Holden, but I feel like Holden still had like the record for longest time in a coma. But nevertheless, like I said, we'll just have to wait to the next episode to kind of find out any potential answers to all of this and see where we're going in the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.